All right. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out on rainy, obviously dark evening. Appreciate you coming up to the community center. This is our first time in this beautiful space. We will be back here next year for some events as well. So, my name is Kristen Greenberg. I am the Executive Director of the Upper Arlington Historical Society. Welcome you here tonight. There were so many people to thank, I had to make a slide so I'd remember them all. So first of all, our presenter tonight is Steve Basford. He is a statistician for the Ohio State football. He also calls the Ohio Wesleyan and Dublin Jerome high school football games, and has not missed a home Ohio State game since 1970. That alone is impressive. Except for the COVID year, of course. COVID was a little off. Storyline Bookshop is here with us this evening. Steve is also an author. He's written 4 books. And so if you'd like to talk with them after the event, they are located in Tremont Center, if you don't know. They also have a new newsletter out at their table they've just produced, so you want to pick one of those up. We love supporting those local businesses. And of course, the team here at Bob Crane Community Center for helping us set up and make this possible tonight. Those lovely ladies you saw at the beginning, Amy, Kate, and Laura, they're part of my events team, and they help us do everything better. So definitely thanks to them. Our members get to sit up front at our events by reserving seats. They support us financially. We are an independent nonprofit organization, so we appreciate the community's support in every way. And we have gotten that support this year from Littleton's. They are our first corporate sponsor, so we're very happy to have them. We are recording tonight's event, so if you could silence your cell phones and know that we're doing recording, that would be great. So why are we doing Ohio versus Michigan? I've had that question a couple times. Here you see why. Of the last 12 head coaches of Ohio State football, 6 have lived in Upper Arlington, starting way back to when we first began with John Wills. So we have strong connections beyond that. We have a lot of Ohio State professors. Is it still working? Okay. We have a lot of Ohio State professors and obviously a lot of Ohio State alum and fans living in our community. So it's very tangible to us, including the closeness, proximity. I literally was walking a couple weeks ago, and this is there now. Like it's real, right? The feeling of Ohio versus Michigan, and so I've been noticing things in the paper. I pulled this out from July. A person from Ohio State's proclaiming they'll never lose to Michigan. A person, wide receiver, Jeremiah Smith. And then commit to Michigan, saying, I'll never lose to Ohio State. I mean, it goes down to those players. It's really personal for them as well. But this conflict goes back, and I'm here to do a little bit of history for you before we get into the football. Goes back to this called the Toledo War. And I'm thankful to the historyguy.net for allowing us to show a bit of video tonight from his website. That QR code leads you right to what we're looking at. I encourage you to go see this whole I think it's about 13 or 14 minutes. I'm not showing it all to you this evening. But do know that the conflict starts in 1787 when the Northwest Territory is created. So I encourage you to go look at that. He speaks quickly. I've looked at it a couple times and gotten something out of it each time. And he has like 77 other videos about history. So the historyguy.net, thankful to him for that. So with that, Now for the real reason why you're here. We're going to turn it over to Steve. Bring his, and let him talk to you about football. All right.
Can I get an OH? I-O. OH? I-O. Go Blue? Go Blue. Hey, we're fair-minded here, right, gentlemen? So thanks for coming. We're going to talk about the best rivalry in all of sports, and that would be Michigan versus Ohio State. Who says so? ESPN says so. Among all the rivalries, Michigan versus Ohio State is at the top, regardless of sports. The only other football one there is Auburn versus Alabama, which kind of makes sense. They really hate each other, unlike Michigan and Ohio State, of course. It's interesting that Army-Navy is not in there. That's because Army and Navy have a lot of respect for each other, right? Just like Michigan and Ohio State. So as you know, the history, as you may or may not know, there's been a series of streaks. One team gets hot, maybe there's a coaching change, and then the other team gets hot. So in the early years, it was dominated by Michigan, 13-0-2, another streak of 6-0. Then the Buckeyes actually had a 7-3 streak, which was pretty good, starting in 1928. When Francis Schmidt came on board, his first 4 years, Buckeyes actually shut out Michigan all 4 years to the tune of 114-0. But then he lost his next 3 games, and he was out the door. 1952, which Woody Hayes' second year, started out a streak of 16-7-1. Never lost 2 in a row to Michigan in that streak. Then in the John Cooper years, it was 12-3-1 in favor of the Blue. Then we switched to the Jim Tressel years and the Urban Meyer years. Buckeyes go 17-2, and as everybody knows, Michigan has won the last 4 seasons. You've heard the term throw out the records. So many times there's been an upset. 5 times Ohio State won when they were unranked, and Michigan was ranked. 2 of those on the road, 1981 and 2001, Jim Tressel's first year. And back-to-back in 1981 and 82, Buckeyes were not ranked, and they upset Michigan. 4 times Michigan has won when they were unranked, and Ohio State was ranked. 2 included the Snow Bowl, the famous Snow Bowl, and last year, which was Sharon Moore's first year. And in each case, the winning coach was in his 4th year or less, which tells you that a coaching change is pretty significant. Here's the history of the average points per game. So you can see it started out pretty low. And in the 50s with Woody Hayes, the games were pretty low scoring. This is combined points. So in the 50s, it was 25 points per game. In the 60s, 31 points per game. In the 70s, during the 10-year war, 24 points per game. The highest output was 35 points in 1975, and that took 2 late touchdowns by the Buckeyes. But in the 80s, it jumped all the way to 39 points per game, which includes a 9-3 game, which was even lower than in the 70s. So 39 points per game, that's because Buckeyes started passing with Earl Bruce. He had quarterbacks who got over 1,000 yards per year, which was unheard of in the Woody Hayes years. And you had great receivers. You had the Carters. You had Anthony Carter for Michigan. You had Chris Carter for Ohio State. So that's why the 80s took off. A little bit of dip in the 90s and the 2000s. Picked up again. Of course, you had the 42-39 game in 2006, number 1 versus number 2. And in the 2010s, all the way up to 67 combined points per game, which includes the 2018 game, which the Buckeyes won 62-39. Our first pop quiz. The teams have played 120 games. The first 60 meetings had how many shutouts? And the last 60 meetings had how many shutouts? So put your thinking caps on. We'll jump to the answer. The first 60 meetings had 33 shutouts, including one 0-0 score. Buckeyes were shut out 24 times. The last 60 meetings had only 3 shutouts. Ohio State was shut out in all 3. You can blame me for 2 of those because I was at 2 of them. I was at that 1964 game, which is considered like the second coldest game in the history. It was like 10 degrees. Second only to the Snow Bowl. And of course, it took an Ohioan playing for Michigan, Bob Timberlake. Passed for a touchdown, kicked a field goal, an extra point. Michigan had 32 Ohioans on the roster. I was at the 1976 game, Michigan 22-0. Rob Lytle, another Ohioan, out of Fremont, Ohio, ran for 165 yards and a touchdown. Michigan threw the ball 6 times, did not complete a pass. And that is the only game in which I left early. And I actually said congratulations to the Michigan fans around me. So I left early, went to a psychiatrist to examine my head. I did not go to the 1993 game, though. First game was in 1897. And here's the Columbus Dispatch account. Of course, you had to shell out 3 cents to get the Dispatch. In 1897, OSU's Waterloo, Michigan defeated Ohio State University by a score of 34-0. The varsity showed quite an improvement over last Saturday's form, but still has a chance for considerable more. All the scores were made in the first half of the game. The visitors' line was found easy, and the varsity had no trouble to gain about at will. In the second half, however, kicking tactics were resorted to, and Michigan could not force a score. I love that, 1897. Can you imagine Tim May or Bill Rabinowitz writing something like that? Here are the 2 squads, probably in full uniform, no pads. In those days, football was more like rugby. Pretty brutal. In fact, Teddy Roosevelt cracked the whip when he was president, saying college football was too violent. Here is the lineup. Thought it was very interesting that the Buckeyes had a player named Urban. Interesting that they mention only 2 officials, and they mention where they came from. So obviously the gentleman from Ypsilanti, he was biased, right? The Lantern said, the game was hard fought from start to finish and entirely free from slugging and objectionable features. Just like last year's game, right? The entire team played gentlemanly, and not a single wrangle arose to mar the game. So if you're keeping stats, please keep stats how many wrangles there are in the next game, please. In the first 5 games, totally dominated by Michigan, 179-0. Yikes, with a scoreless tie. In the first 15 games, 371-21. But in 1904, the Buckeyes scored, and it was celebrated in the newspaper. Scarlet and Gray scores on Wolverine Giants. Yost men experience biggest of surprises. 6,000 rooters go wild with excitement over the battle. Buckeyes scored. Yeah, it's a start, right? Got to start somewhere. The Maize and Blue of Michigan suffered the humiliation. Oh my gosh. Buckeyes scored and Michigan was humiliated. Suffered the humiliation of having a goal line hitherto protected from the onslaughts of the Scarlet and Gray in the 4 eventful years of struggles with the Ohio State University, crossed by a runner of the Buckeyes team during the second half of the grueling contest on Ohio State's field Saturday afternoon. Fear gripped the hearts of Yost's champions like an icy hand. And Coach Yost, crouching from the sidelines, knew the anxiety of a general who sees his forces hard beset and in danger of being routed by a foe whom he expected to vanquish with ease. Buckeyes scored, but Michigan wouldn't take that lightly. Next 3 games, 68-0. Again, I ask you, would Tim May write something like that? Buckeyes finally won in 1919. Chick Harley in his senior year. What does it say for the cost? I can't see the cost of the paper. 7 cents, is that what it says? Boy, Costs are getting out of hand, I'm telling you. Harley-led Buckeye Gridiron Warriors bring back to Columbus town that long-coveted Wolverine scalp. In other news, President calls on coal miners to rescind strike order. Here's a photo from that game. The Michigan Yearbook's caption for the photo said, "This is the play that gave Ohio the victory. Harley is making up his mind whether to pass to Stinchcomb or to plunge through Michigan's bewildered line." I'm impressed that they could tell what Harley was thinking, you know. Also impressed that they could tell that Michigan's line was bewildered. And the stadium was dedicated in 1921, Ohio Stadium. Buckeyes lost to Michigan. But in other news that day, women urged skirts 7 inches from shoe soles. Major news. 10 cents, oh my gosh, costs are getting out of hand, I'm telling you. New York Times said this was the greatest day in Midwestern football history, the opening of the stadium. 1922, the game was played. In 1926, things are getting tough. 5 persons burned at stadium when bomb explodes in bleachers. 5 others are injured in gate rush. Pickpockets active at homecoming game. More than 90,000 crammed into Ohio Stadium. Estimated 15,000 more swirled and anxiously around the Mammoth Horseshoe, hoping to gain entrance one way or another. Local police had to call in armed service reinforcements for nearby Fort Hays to quell the mob. Not that they were entirely successful. Just before the game start, someone launched a makeshift bomb over the stadium wall and into the crowd. This explosion injured dozens. Francis Schmidt, famous for the line, "Those guys put their pants on one leg at a time, the same as you do," that initiated the gold pants trinket. And again, his first 4 years, 4 shutouts, 114-0 combined. But then, the last 3 years, it was all Michigan. Turning to the 40s, Ohio State was called the graveyard of coaches. It had 5 coaches in the decade. Michigan had 2. But each team had a national championship. Paul Brown in his second season, Benny Oosterbaan in his first for Michigan. Each team had a Heisman Trophy winner, Tom Harmon, Les Horvath. And in 1940, in his last game, Tom Harmon led the Wolverines to a 40-0 victory, scoring 3 rushing touchdowns, 2 passing touchdowns, 4 extra points, intercepting 3 passes, and punting 3 times for an average of 50 yards. Other than that, he didn't do anything. In an unprecedented display of sportsmanship and appreciation, the Buckeye fans in Columbus gave Harmon a standing ovation at game's end. How many people do that today? Yeah. Give a Wolverine a standing ovation? Sure. And in 1946, Michigan won 58-6. With 1:38 remaining, Michigan leading 55-0, kicked a 22-yard field goal. Would that come back to haunt them later? We shall see. The Snow Bowl, 50,000 fans. Michigan was a 1-2 touchdown underdog. It's only the second time, so the calendar really affected the weather, because up till then, it had been basically a week earlier. If the game had been a week earlier, never would have had a Snow Bowl. It's only the second time the game was played as late as November 25th. The previous year was played on November 19th, so that was the pattern. Interestingly, the Penn State versus Pitt game in Pittsburgh was moved to Monday. It's from the Columbus Dispatch. Heads up, university officials warned fans that all toilets in the top of the stadium were frozen Saturday, and that only those on the ground level under the stadium would be open. OSU game on it in snow. Fessler was irked. Coach Wesley Fessler tried to get the game moved. Didn't happen. And these are the famous stats. A whole bunch of punting. Michigan had no first downs. The Buckeyes had a whopping 3. There you see all the punts. Something like 45 punts, combined. Vic Janowitz kicks a field goal, which is considered like one of the biggest performances in a football game ever, kicking a field goal into the wind in the Snow Bowl. Here's one picture of it. Here's another. We actually had brothers competing against each other, one for Michigan, one for Ohio State, the Momsen brothers. At the end of the first half, Tony blocked a Vic Janowitz punt and recovered the ball in the end zone for the only touchdown. Final score is 9-3. Westchester's last game. So Woody Hayes comes on board in 1951. Didn't win his first game, but in 1954, the Buckeyes win 21-7. They go to Woody Hayes' first Rose Bowl and beat Southern Cal. A straight-up punt by fullback Hubert Bobo gave Michigan the ball on Ohio's 14-yard line late in the third period. Wolverine fullback Dave Hill and right half Ed Hickey combined to push the ball to first down on the Buckeye 4. So Michigan actually had the ball at the 1. So a goal line stand like you're getting accustomed to the Buckeyes doing last couple of years. But Buckeyes hold at the 1-yard line, and they take it for a touchdown and add another touchdown. So the game was 7-7, but the Buckeyes tack on the 2 touchdowns, and they win 21-7. In 1957, another championship year for the Buckeyes. Woody Hayes wins his second national championship. The game was played at Michigan. However, there were some exuberant fans, Buckeye fans. Happiest fan among the nearly 20,000 jubilant Ohio State participants here today was Gary Krigbaum. By the way, the newspaper actually had his address. I took it out. A one-time football player. After the Buckeyes scored the last touchdown, Krigbaum ran onto the field to huddle with Ohio State players on about the 30-yard line. The scoreboard showed 4 minutes of playing time, and only seconds after Krigbaum went into the huddle with the team, fans started pouring onto the north end of the field, seeking to tear down the goalposts. The victory celebration, marked by a score of fistfights between Ohio and Michigan partisans, started before the conclusion of the game. It lasted more than 30 minutes. He ran into the field to get with the team. The officials had to play long enough to escort him off the playing field. "Why did you do it?" Newsman asked. "Why, I wanted to give them a little stimulant if they wanted it. They deserved it. This is something historic," he asserted. A few seconds later, Krigbaum led the assault on the north goalpost. He started climbing the upright. Several more fans from Ohio's main rooting section ran into the field to assist him. Michigan fans shouted protests. They yelled, "The game's not over yet. Wait till it's over." Game officials stopped play and ordered the Ohioans off the field. As Michigan moved the ball down the field, the fans started another onslaught on the goalpost. They surged onto the playing field. Michigan team managers urged them to get off the field. The appeals went unheeded. Some Michigan fans rushed onto the field. Fists started flying. Only a few persons appeared to get really clobbered. Mostly it was a case of swinging, missing, and mostly falling down. Meanwhile, as time ran out of the game, the fans swarmed all over the field, and more fights started around the south goalpost. Can you imagine? Maybe some passionate fans. Can you imagine that? Come to the 60s, what I call the 7-year switch. From 61 to 67, the road team won 6 of the 7 games, including 5 straight. From 68 to 74, the home game was 6-0-1. From 75 to 81, the road team was 6-1, helped by Earl Bruce winning his first 2 games. The 63 game was delayed a week due to the JFK assassination. I think the Buckeyes were on the way to Ann Arbor, had to turn around. They played a week later. Attendance was only 36,000 and some. 1961, the Buckeyes playing at Michigan. A very tense game, a very, very tense game. With 34 seconds remaining, Joe Sparmer lifted a 70-yard pass to Paul Warfield, who was stopped on the Wolverine 10-yard line. 3 plays later, Sparmer hit Sam Tidmore for the touchdown and added the 2-point conversion, another pass, to Tidmore to make the final score. Remember, this is a touch game. They really need that drive. Final score was 50-20. It was the only time that the losing team scored at least 20 points. At least 20 points. Only 2 other scores in the 58-game series were higher. Michigan's 86-0 in 1902, and that 58-6 win in 1946. Hayes, in a way, paid back Michigan for kicking that field goal way back in 1946. So Woody Hayes had a memory you don't want to cross, Woody Hayes. And in '68, the Buckeyes, another national championship, Woody's third. Another 50-point performance, 50-14 this time. And I got to real check all this because I'm on the stats crew. And way back in these days, all the stats, the log, were done free form. You know, somebody actually typed each play. Whereas today, we just punch in numbers, and it generates, here's the yard line, here's the gain. But actually, someone was typing this in from scratch and decided to rub it in. At the very end of the game, he said, 50 points? Yep, that's right. By the way, if you get a chance, you can see all these old box scores online, the Ohio State website, and it is hilarious. The free-form opinions that somebody typed in, like, Otis bulldozed over the left side, or Paul Warfield glided like a gazelle down the right side. And in 1969, Bo Schembechler arrives, starting the 10-year war. In the first 9 years, the two teams tied for the Big Ten championship 6 times. Ohio State won it outright twice. Michigan won once. And each coach won 13 Big Ten championships. But then the dreaded 1969 season, when the Buckeyes were ranked number 1, Michigan wins 24-12, snapping Ohio State's 22-game winning streak. Thanks to Bo Schembechler, attendance was a sellout for the first time in Michigan, because 2 years previously, only 64,000 fans in Michigan Stadium. It's going to be a long winter, it said in the dispatch. Very clever how they inverted the word Bucks. Wolves, upend Bucks. All right, here's your next pop quiz. In the 1972 and 73 games combined, Ohio State completed how many passes? 11. You got a gentleman saying 0. Somebody said 11?
11, 13.
The answer is 1. Buckeyes completed 1 pass.
No.
Yes. And those two games combined. Can you guess who caught the pass for the Buckeyes? Archie. Right. I was at the game, but I actually missed it because my seat was behind one of those poles. So I see this pass, and it disappears, and then I see Archie Griffin. So, 1 pass completion in 72. Woody Hayes always said if you pass it 3 times, 2 things can happen that are bad. It actually happened in that game. 1 completion, 1 incompletion, 1 interception. In the 73 game, Cornelius Green and Greg Hare, no pass completions. As we saw earlier, in 76, Michigan had no pass completions in their game. We saw that the 70s were really low scoring. In 71 through 75, and close games, the games were decided by 3-3-0, that tie, 2 and 7 points. That's how close the games were. So, in those 5 games, Ohio State scored 64, Michigan scored 55. In 2018, Buckeyes scored almost as many points in that one game as they did in the 5 years in that span. Another pop quiz. In the 71 through the 82 games, Ohio State had how many touchdown passes?
4.
Somebody said 4? Okay. In the 2018 game, Ohio State had how many touchdown passes? In 71 through 82, 2 touchdown passes. One of those was to our superstar receiver, Pete Johnson. Pete Johnson caught the only touchdown pass in 75. The only touchdown pass in 79 was by Chuck Hunter. My family, who were in the audience, we were all there for that 79 game. So the Buckeyes actually had a touchdown completion in 79. It was actually deflected by a Michigan player into the hands of Chuck Hunter, who was originally a running back. In the 2018 game, six touchdown passes. The famous 1971 game, Michigan was undefeated. Buckeyes were 6-3 going into the game. Buckeyes had the lead late on a Tom Campana punt return. And then Michigan gets the ball, and Woody went ballistic when he thought there was a pass interference that was not called. How many people watched that 1971 game?
At Michigan?
Yeah, at Michigan.
I was there.
Well, if you were anywhere but in the stadium at Michigan, the only way you could watch the game, like I did, was in Mershon Auditorium on a closed circuit because it was not televised. 1972, the famous goal line stands for the Buckeyes. Buckeyes had 2 goal line stands. 14-11, the Buckeyes win. It was the only game of the season where Michigan gave up more than 9 points. Both teams had tremendous defenses. Michigan had not given up more than 9 points until that game. The famous 1973 tie, the only tie from 1950 through 1991, played at Michigan. Before the game, Ohio State players tried to take down the banner, the Michigan banner. Of course, Ohio State players would never do that again, right? Or Michigan players, they wouldn't do that, right? They wouldn't plant a flag or anything like that. So Michigan was very upset, of course, that they thought they deserved the vote. There was a vote taken by the Big Ten commissioners. A fantastic documentary, if you haven't seen it, called Tiebreaker. And there's no resolution what the actual vote was. Some people said it was 6-4. Some said it was 5-4-1. There are no records about it. All we know is that the Buckeyes got the vote and went to the Rose Bowl and won 42-21 over Southern Cal. So a Michigan student actually filed a suit saying the vote was illegal. And if you look this up, it's not like the student was a loose cannon. He had a very long legal career. So he was very passionate about it, but the judge denied it. And Bo Schembechler said, "I'm very bitter. I regret it. It's a tragic thing for Big Ten football. This is the darkest day of my athletic career." So Woody Hayes' record versus Michigan was 16-11-1. If that tie had not taken place, his record would have been 17-11, which matches his address. You can't make this up, right? In 74, the famous 4 field goals by Tom Claiborne, 12-10. Second straight year in which Michigan misses a field goal at the end, which would have won it. In the dispatch, it says scalpers market collapses at game. I remember I had to pay $25 to get into the game. I didn't have season tickets or something. I had to pay $25. And that night, on the news, they actually showed a student before the game say, I can't sell this ticket. I'll take 25 cents for it. From 1970 through 75, Michigan 57-0-2 entering the Ohio State game. But they could only win 1 game in those 6 years, plus the tie. And it wasn't until 75 that another Big Ten team could go to a bowl other than the Rose Bowl. So Michigan, with this record like nobody else, couldn't go to a bowl game until 1975, which the Buckeyes won that game. 76 through 80, Buckeyes scored 0, 3, 3, 18, and 3 points with only 1 offensive touchdown. That was the 1979 game, 18-15, but only 1 offensive touchdown because the Buckeyes scored the winning touchdown on a block punt And again, my family was there. We were in that end zone, and the block bump came right at us. So, blocked by Jim Laughlin, returned by Todd Bell for the winning touchdown. And the Buckeyes go to the Rose Bowl in Earl Bruce's first year. 1986, somebody from Michigan said, "We're going to play in the Rose Bowl this year, I guarantee it. We'll beat Ohio State, and we'll be in Pasadena on January 1. Jim Harbaugh. By the way, Kirk Herbstreit says that he wore number 4 because Jim Harbaugh was his idol. So, go figure. Another pop quiz. In that game, Ohio State had a graduate assistant coach named Urban Meyer. The famous Earl Bruce 1987 game. Buckeyes win 23-20. Earl Bruce had been fired the week before, still allowed to coach. It was Bo Schembechler's last Big Ten loss because in his next 2 years, he went 15-0-1. Pardon me?
Colorado State.
He went to Northern Iowa and then to Colorado State. A very cold game. I wouldn't know. I was in the press box, but that's okay. So you've had a history of what I call switching sides. Here you've got Gary Moeller, you got Bo Schembechler, you got Brady Hoke, you got Jim Harbaugh. All 4 were born in Ohio. In fact, the same doctor who delivered Jim Harbaugh delivered Urban Meyer in Toledo. So from 69 through 2023, in 39 of the 55 years, the Michigan coach was born in Ohio. Bo Schembechler from Barberton, Gary Moeller from Lima, Brady Hoke from Dayton, Jim Harbaugh from Toledo. Furthermore, Bo had been an assistant coach and earned his master's degree at Ohio State, and Gary Moeller had played for Ohio State. And Bo Schembechler was an assistant coach in that 1961 game, which the Buckeyes won 50-20. So those are Ohioans for Michigan, but we had Rick Bay. So from 84 to 87, Rick Bay was the Buckeyes athletic director. He played football, he was an All-American wrestler, and he coached wrestling at Michigan. And when Earl Bruce was fired, Rick Bay quit out of support for Earl Bruce. In the 80s, scoring was just 1 point apart. 197 for Michigan, 196 for Ohio State. 3 times in the 80s, the Buckeyes had a 3-game losing streak, but in 82 and 87, they beat Michigan. And in 88, when they had a 3-game losing streak, they actually had a 4-point lead with 2 minutes left. The most points that Michigan gave up in the 70s to any team was 27. They beat Ohio State in the 88 game, 34-31, matching the most points that they allowed in 3 other games in the 80s. So the Buckeyes lost to Michigan in 88, 34-31. What was unusual about their 31 points that the Buckeyes scored? They were all in the second half. Halftime score was 20-0. Buckeyes actually took the lead, but Michigan scored last. Buckeyes put up 31 points in the second half. In the 90s, Buckeyes actually got 2 wins. And in Columbus, Buckeyes outscored Michigan 88-64. But in Ann Arbor, it was Michigan 134, Ohio State 57. 3 of the most famous Michigan players in that span: Desmond Howard out of Cleveland, Ohio, with a 93-yard punt return. Tim Biakabatuga, who's actually from Canada, 313 yards rushing. 1997, Charles Woodson out of Ohio had a 77-yard punt return. I was at all 3 of those games. Pretty brutal. In 94, the Buckeyes and John Cooper got his first win, 22-6. And John Cooper finally claimed victory over Michigan after firing at the Buckeyes by punching a blackboard at halftime. So you had John Cooper and you had Lloyd Carr, which They were both from Tennessee, about 70 miles apart. It's almost a Battle of Tennessee. John Cooper from Powell, which is near Knoxville, and Lloyd Carr's from Hawkins County, approximately 70 miles apart. I think we all remember this day. When Jim Tressel was hired and made his speech at a basketball game against Michigan, by the way. And he said, most especially in 310 days, you'll be proud of the Buckeyes in the classroom, in the community, and most especially on the playing field at Michigan. And he delivered. 2001, Buckeyes win 26-20. Following year, Buckeyes win 14-9, another national championship season. Buckeyes go on to beat Miami. So I tell you, 2002 was such a great year that somebody should write a book about it. No, somebody did. Again, you had a case of switching sides. In the Michigan National Championship in '97, Charles Woodson was from Fremont, Ohio. But in the Buckeyes 2002 championship, Craig Krenzel was from Utica, Michigan. The famous 2006 game, number 1 versus number 2, Bo Schembechler had passed away the day before. Buckeyes win 42-39. The famous 2016 game, double overtime, number 2 against number 3. I call that deja vu. There's so many similarities between this game and the Miami game, the 2003. Both games were double overtime. Both games had a field goal in the last second or so in regulation. And in both games, there's a controversial call on 4th down in overtime that went the Buckeyes' way. Coaching changes from 1901 through 2023. Michigan had 12 coaches. 9 of them beat Ohio State in his first game. The asterisk means that Sharon Moore was filling in for the suspended Jim Harbaugh, and he won his first game. But when the Buckeyes make coaching changes, things turn out better. Before John Wills, 0-12-2. Afterwards, 4-7. That's an improvement. Before Francis Schmidt, lost 3 out of 4. Francis Schmidt won 4 straight. Before Paul Brown, 3 straight losses, 79-14. With Paul Brown, 1 win, 1 loss, and a tie with the national championship. Before Woody Hayes, 1-6-1. Outscored 174-47. With Woody Hayes, he started out 16. He went 16-11 and 1. Outscored the Wolverines 420-341. Before Earl Bruce, 3 straight losses, outscored 50-9. With Earl Bruce, 3 wins in the first 4 years. He went 5-4 overall against Michigan, outscoring the Wolverines 155-50. Before Jim Tressel, 2-10-1, outscored 298-220. With Jim Tressel, 9-1, outscoring the Wolverines 279-172. And history continues to be made. The team with more rushing yards has won every year since 2001. And in the last 2 years, the first consecutive seasons with Michigan and Ohio State winning national championships. And in 2024, first time Ohio State won a national championship without beating Michigan. So I am Steve Basford. These are my 3 other books. You can find me on Twitter. You can email me. You can check out my website, which is called Steve's College Football Page. Buckeye Memories covers every game from 1968 through 2020, plus over 500 fun facts. 2001 games is about how I became a broadcaster. I'm actually up to over 2,400 games now. And my most recent book is on the best movie of all time, Breaking Away.
All right, well, thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
And again, thank you for coming out. Again, we appreciate the members that support us and look forward to a great year in 2026. If you're not a member, we'd appreciate and love to have you. So have a great night. Thank you for coming out.